Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into what honestly feels like a high-stakes geopolitical thriller, but actually, this isn't fiction. Today, we're exploring the hidden, physical reality of our digital world. We tend to think of our modern era as totally wireless, right? Just floating above us, completely detached from the physical constraints of the Earth. But as we're going to see from a recent collection of geopolitical and security briefings, the truth is way more grounded, incredibly physical, and honestly, shockingly vulnerable.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear the phrase, the cloud, what do you actually picture? Most of us kind of imagine data floating invisibly in the air around us, maybe beamed effortlessly from satellites directly into our phones. It's a really comforting illusion, this whole idea of a completely wireless, untouchable internet. But to truly understand global security today, we absolutely have to shatter that illusion. Because if you want to know where your emails, your financial transactions, your streaming movies, and even highly sensitive government communications actually live and travel,
the answer is the bottom of the ocean. Literally. The true backbone of global connectivity isn't up in the sky at all. It's made up of hundreds of thousands of miles of physical, fiber-optic cables resting right on the seabed. These subsea cables are the absolute unsung heroes of the modern age, carrying pretty much all of our intercontinental data traffic. But here's the catch, and it's a huge one. They're extremely fragile. We're talking about physical wires that are often no thicker than a garden hose, just sitting there entirely unprotected in a really harsh underwater environment. And that physical reality creates some very real physical vulnerabilities. Section 1. The Internet's Physical Choke Points. Drawing on recent data from strategic geopolitical briefings, let's look at the macro view of how all this global data flows. It doesn't just spread out evenly. Instead, it bottlenecks into these massive single points of failure. The data highlights that almost all intercontinental traffic is forced to travel through incredibly narrow, highly congested geographical choke points. We're talking about places like the el-Mandeb Strait, the Suez Canal corridor, and the Strait of Malacca. Because these physical cables have to follow the most efficient underwater topography, they end up clustered together in these tight corridors. So if something happens in just one of these narrow straits, a massive percentage of the globe's internet traffic can be throttled or even entirely cut off in an instant.
Section 2. Accidental drag or state sabotage.
We know the geography is vulnerable, but let's pivot to the human element. Now, what's really interesting here is the contrast. Cables get damaged pretty often by, say, a clumsy commercial fishing boat or a massive cargo ship that drops its anchor, drags it along the seafloor, and accidentally snags a fiber-optic line. Stuff happens. But September 2025 findings from the UK Joint Committee on National Security Strategy point out a chilling new dilemma. How do you actually tell the difference between a genuine, clumsy civilian accident and state-backed, deniable sabotage? If a state actor wants to cut off a nation's communication, they don't need to send in a high-tech submarine with lasers. They just need a commercial ship to accidentally drop its anchor in the wrong place. It's literally the weaponization of clumsiness, and it makes figuring out the perpetrator's true intent almost impossible.
Section 3. Taiwan and the Gray Zone.
To see how this works in practice, we can look at research compiled by Hanmin Yao from the ROC National Defense University. He frames undersea cybersecurity through a very specific lens: gray zone operations. Now, if you're not familiar, these are covert competitive acts carried out by state or non-state actors that fall right into that murky, undefined area between normal peacetime competition and outright armed conflict. They're specifically designed to achieve strategic goals without crossing the threshold that would trigger a conventional military response. It is essentially the ultimate strategy of plausible deniability. So, what does a gray zone attack on these cables actually look like? Well, the research points to what's basically a modern Trojan horse. Yao identifies specific tactical details involving Chinese-operated but Cameroon-registered cargo ships operating near Taiwanese islands. Now, why does that registration matter? By using vessels registered to foreign nations, operators add a really thick layer of plausible deniability. It completely masks the true origin and intent of the vessel's movements, making it look like standard international commercial maritime traffic instead of a state-coordinated asset. Let's see how this builds into a precise, step-by-step tactical blueprint for isolating these islands. Step 1. Employ that foreign-registered cargo ship to maintain cover. Step 2. Navigate the ship so it's positioned directly over a known, critical subsea cable. And Step 3. Deploy the ship's anchor in a so-called error, allowing it to drag across the seabed and physically sever the communications line. It's a highly effective, remarkably low-tech method of cutting off a region's digital lifeline, all while maintaining the perfect cover story of just a simple maritime mistake.
Section 4. The Lawless Ocean Loophole.
So the crucial point is how international maritime law complicates all of this. An analysis from the Texas National Security Review highlights the absolute core issue here, stating that nations are powerless to punish perpetrators when a cable is severed outside territorial limits. This exposes a massive legal gap in how we govern the oceans. See, inside a country's territorial waters, which is usually about 12 nautical miles from the coast, that nation's laws apply. But the vast majority of these undersea cables run straight through international waters. And out there, the legal framework is incredibly weak.
It basically creates the conditions for the perfect crime. Sabotage in international waters goes completely unpunished. There's a really deep, unsettling irony here when you think about it. We've built the most highly advanced, lightning-fast global digital network in the history of humanity. Our entire economies, our security, our daily lives literally depend on it. Yet this futuristic network is entirely undefended against a piece of technology invented 3,000 years ago, a heavy piece of metal dragging on the ocean floor.
Which leaves us with this final, vital thought. We've seen how fragile these physical cables are. We've seen the incredibly narrow geographical choke points they run through. We've examined how actors can use commercial ships to carry out deniable gray zone sabotage, and we've learned that international law currently offers zero protection or punishment when this happens out in deep water. So, I leave you with this. If our modern digital lives, our finances, our communications, our very governments rely so heavily on a lawless physical ocean, how secure are we really? It's a massive question that global security experts are racing to answer right now, and it shows exactly why international collaboration on undersea cable resilience is more urgent today than ever before. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope it has entirely changed the way you look at the cloud.